recommend consent for items 2 and 3. And
3, without objection.
the rest warrant discussion.
All right.
Item number 1 is an oral presentation by Los Angeles Convention Center relative to its green programs.
Great. I see you brought us some presents.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Today we are here basically to give a presentation on various programs that we have implemented at the Los Angeles Convention Center that has placed the Convention Center as an undisputed leader in terms of environment and energy in our industry. Before you have part of our program that we unveiled in November of 2007, right before the auto show. We converted all our food services areas, the 11 restaurants that are in the Convention Center, to have biodegradable serviceware. Also, we rolled out the composting program, the food composting program, where 100% of our food waste goes to composting facility, and that's a partnership with Bureau of Sanitation. As you see, and when you had a chance to look through the bag, the serviceware that we have in there, the forks, the knives, the spoons, are all made of potato starch. All the clear containers that you see there, the salad containers, the plastic that is inside the bags, are all from sugarcane. So again, this becomes even more interesting when with the price of oil going up, actually it costs us less to go to biodegradable and organic-based, vegetable-based serviceware rather than going to old plastic. So again, it's something that is good for the environment, but it's great for our business too. And right now we are working with the International Association of Facility Managers nationwide to implement this program in other convention centers in the nation. So again, we wanted to share that with you.
Now that you've implemented this program, do you have any thoughts about whether it had any negative impact on your operations?
It had no negative impact. And again, it's been some months, and we have had major shows at the convention center, and we have had no negative impact in terms of the how sturdy the serviceware are, the plates are. Everything has been again as expected. So we're fully going forward with the program as we move forward.
Good morning, council members. Philip Hill, Assistant General Managers. It's really kind of special. What we're seeing from our clients is that they are surprised when they come for site visits to see how environmentally sustainable we are. And that now becomes a main selling point for future conventions. They expect other convention centers to be able to match us, and most cannot. So we find a lot of excitement there, and we're ahead of the other centers, we're running at a faster pace. So our intent is to maintain the lead.
And we have a few other programs that are of significant importance. We are one of the largest DWP customers, and we are one of the largest ones that have enrolled in the Green Power program. Starting April of 2007, we were enrolled at 20% of our consumption in the Green Power program, and as of February of 2008, we enrolled at 30%. As you know, that comes at additional costs, but our goal is, if we are going to be the biggest city in the United States, we have to have a convention center that represents that. Therefore, we'll absorb the extra cost, but do what's right for the environment. And that has been, on the business side, has been a great selling point for the convention center. More shows, more green shows are looking at the convention center. We are going to have 5 environmental green events at the convention center, and one of the reasons we think we are able to attract them is because we show the goals that we are pursuing and what we have accomplished thus far.
Anything to add? Any questions or comments from colleagues? And we've also been joined by Mr. Alarcon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Gruhl.
Question. So the restaurants that you have.
Yes.
Now, if you come in as a conventioner, you're coming in and you have an event there. Do they have to use your restaurants, or can they use outside?
Well, yeah, they can use outside, but for most of the part, the conventioners, because they have events and sessions in the morning and afternoon, they rather stay at the convention center. So for the most part, they do use our facilities, but there are facilities around us. And one of the things we've done, we've expanded the discussion with AEG to look at potentially using the same type of serviceware at the restaurants and various places that are opening up as part of the LA Live. Again, just taking it a step further.
I was thinking, if are there places that come into the convention center provide food that you can encourage to also be, environmentally sustainable, or I don't know. if
No,
you
yeah,
need
yeah.
to use
The food is exclusive to the convention center.
Okay,
Yes,
all right, I'm doing that.
certainly.
And it'd be interesting, the synergy between AEG and the convention center as to whether or not, there's some combined efforts in what they may be doing, and get some ability. Are they recycling all of theirs? I mean, are they?
No, they have not, but they're great partners in that they look at what they're doing.
Recycling program. I just went to an event last week where they not only have a recycling coordinator, but their recycling program is pretty massive. It might not be the same as yours, but
Right.
I went through a number of facilities, through Staples, through Nokia, into their offices over on Flower and Olympic. And it was really quite obvious. And then they had this huge gathering out there on the plaza.
And the next phase of that is to incorporate, again, biodegradable serviceware
Yeah.
into that program and the composting, because they do have large food services
Yes.
operations also.
Yeah. I think once they open up all the restaurants.
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly. We're looking forward to that. A couple of other things, and we have it in the presentation, and I didn't want to go into a lot of detail on that we've done is we've converted all our exhibit hall and parking lighting to more efficient lighting systems where we get the same luminous, the same lighting with about 50% less usage of energy and electricity. That's how we've been able to keep our energy costs very steady over the past few years, although, the energy load, the event load has increased and the energy costs have increased. Basically, our expenditure levels have remained the same.
I think we've also been joined by Mr. Cardenas.
morning.
Any other questions or comments from committee members? If not, well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Illuminating.
Thank you.
I think we've consented 2 and 3, so the next item should be 4.
Number 4 relates to 2008 illegal dumping grant report from EAD. This matter was continued from your April 15th meeting for them to provide a breakdown by council district of illegal dumping activities. They've done so.
So you got the breakdown?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you start with that?
Wayne Suda, Environmental Affairs Department, and with me today are Gary Harris from the Bureau of Street Services, Bruce Howell from the Bureau of Street Services, and Kevin Gilligan from the City Attorney's Office.
Because the copy we have here is really light and it's hard to read.
Oh, okay. I do have the percentages in a better table.
I've got more go with that.
Well, do you have enough for everybody?
Just the numbers.
Okay, great. Thanks. You have one more? Great. Number 1 again, huh?
Up the chart.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, in the last meeting, we were asked to provide the percentages by council district. Any details on the enforcement program and outreach. So we are here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so the reason that we asked you to do this is breakdown is we want to make sure that the grant funding is consistent with the need. So now that you've broken this out by council district, has that changed your approach at all, or what? Talk to me about that.
No, we still believe this is the best approach for this particular grant application. The 3 districts, Council District 8, 9, and 15 represent 52% of the illegal dumping, or $6 million worth of illegal dumping that the city has to incur as cost. The feature of this particular grant program is that we're trying to put together a pilot program for the city to use in all citywide, all council districts, to discourage future illegal dumping. And that's why we reserve some funding, about a third of the funding for that purpose.
For the rest of the city?
Yeah. Well, that would be as a result of this pilot program.
Okay, so break it out. The total grant is?
$500,000. $300,000 of which would go for the pickup and disposal of illegal dumping in those 3 districts, 8, 9, and 15.
And how long does that last? Thank you.
It would last 1 year.
Okay, for 1 year?
Yeah.
Okay. And that leaves?
$200,000 broken down into inspectional cost for the enforcement of about $100,000 $100,000, an outreach component of $55,000, and project contract administration and project management of about $45,000.
Yeah, Mr. Cardenas?
Yeah, so the $100,000 for inspectors,
Yes.
that, none of that's going to be utilized during the process of the picking up of trash in the 8th, 9th, and 15th district?
No, that is to offset the cost of the enforcement program that will be rolled out in those 3 districts. And, yes.
I don't understand what you mean by that, to offset the costs. You mean you're going to, because there's this intensity going on in that district, you're going to fortify the rest of the city with $100,000 to cover up, to cover the, I guess, the void caused by the manpower or something and the trucks and all that? What do you mean by that? Offset.
Councilmember, if I may, Kevin Gilligan from the City Attorney's Office. Good morning, honorable council members. The idea is to have an enforcement program set up. Currently in South Los Angeles, we're able to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 surveillances a month to deal with a $6 million problem and over 50% of the illegal dumping in the city. The idea is that we have approached Public Works and said, can you please give us resources? Can you work with the City Attorney's Office, Public Works, Street Services investigators to do additional surveillance? And they've said they are unable to do so unless they have overtime money in order to do this enforcement. So the idea is to use that money to do enforcement, to actually try and catch some of the illegal dumpers. And then in addition to the cleanup, we would seek to do an outreach effort, bilingual, to reach the dumpers. We estimate that about 50% of the illegal dumping is coming from outside the city, and perhaps 50% is coming from inside the city. So we believe that outreach to residents, educating them about the city's illegal dumping reward program, working with the neighborhood councils, working with community police advisory boards and LAPD, any CBOs that want to work with us, collectively we could try and target the worst area. We clearly don't have enough resources to deal with this massive problem. It costs the city over approximately $12 million a year to clean up. So given the tight budget scenario that we're all aware of, we're trying to focus on the most acute needs based on the volume that has been presented to us from Public Works. So we're trying to do an integrated effort with enforcement, outreach, and education in a pilot program, and if that works, we would hope to expand it citywide.
Okay. You still managed to confuse me, because what was stated earlier was that $300,000 was going to be dedicated to those 3 districts. I'm assuming that breaks down to all of the costs necessary to do that fortification in those 3 districts. Now, aside from that, there's another $200,000, which is broken down by $100,000, $55,000, and $45,000. How does that break down to the earlier statement that $300,000 is going to be used in those 3 districts and $200,000 is going to be citywide? I could have sworn that's what I heard.
No, I may have
I know, but I heard somebody say.
I miscommunicated that.
Yeah, that's all I want to do is just make sure that I understand
The focus
how this money is going to be used.
The focus of this grant is in those 3 districts.
Okay.
And what I meant to say was that anything we learned in terms of enforcement and the materials developed for public outreach could be used citywide later on. But
100 per district if you average it out.
But in the cost of developing those materials would be borne by this grant rather than the city.
So basically, are you saying that the contract administration costs $45,000, and then the $55,000, which was something
Outreach.
Outreach.
will also go to the benefit of the expenditures being made in the 8th, 9th, and 10th, but it's
By and large.
citywide.
I believe it's 8, 9, and 15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 8, 9, and
8 and
15.
15, you're right, sorry. So that's what you're saying, that basically they're sort of facilitating the $300,000 too, without being included in that $300,000, because that's part of the citywide effort. Is that correct?
Now I'm getting confused. I'm sorry.
I think I understand the question. I'm sorry. It's fairly simple. All the money, this $500,000, will be used in 8, 9, and 15. Period.
Thank you.
That's the answer.
Somebody used the term 300,000 and then the rest citywide, what have you. Don't say that. Just, it's the
Confusing.
8th, 9th, and 15th, and if there's any spillover and benefit to the other parts of the city or what have you, God bless all of us. But the bottom line is this $500,000 is dedicated to working on those 3 districts, and I'm here, from what I'm gathering, I'm assuming that lessons learned in outreach, lessons learned on how to communicate with the community, lessons learned on how to really eradicate this problem where it's most egregious, are going to then, after the fact, be able to be used because we will now own that knowledge at somebody else's expense, but we will own that knowledge, and then we could use that knowledge to hopefully be more effective in the future across the city. Is that what we're doing here?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if I can make a suggestion, an easy way to do outreach in these districts is to make sure that every child in school takes something home to their family. It's pretty direct. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I have one further request. I was contacted by the Waste Board Grant Office yesterday, and they had requested a resolution be accompanied, or a resolution be passed by City Council and accompany the application. So I
Why
prepared
don't
a
you
draft.
draft something and then get it over to my office? You can meet with Jeff Catalano, and then we'll get it through for you. Okay?
Okay,
Before council.
yes.
Yeah, great.
Madam Chair, actually, it has been submitted. It simply needs to be attached to this file.
Oh, it
And
does?
it is consistent with what's being requested in the report.
So move the item with the attached
All right, so
resolution.
we'll go with the attachment, yeah, that's fine.
Can I
Great.
ask, I do want to go back and ask one little question. You identified 50 high-priority chronic illegal areas. Were all of those in those 3 districts?
They were the top 50 sites of the greatest quantity of illegal dumping in the city.
In those 3 districts.
Yes.
No.
No, city
That's,
water.
no, I'm asking. When you applied for this grant, you said there were 50, you identified 50 high-priority chronic illegal dumping sites. Are all of those in these 3 districts?
Yes.
There are no other high-priority sites?
Within those council districts.
No, that's not what your application said. By reading your application to the California Integrated Waste Management Board, I was under the impression that 50 sites were distributed throughout the city of Los Angeles, but there were high chronic areas, what you called high chronic areas. I think that's what the term you use in CD 8, 9, and 15. But it seems to me odd that there wouldn't be other sites throughout the city that would be very bad.
Illegal dumping moves around. It's not necessarily the same location. Within those council districts, they are the same locations, primarily in the alleys, not so much in the streets.
Yeah, you're still not answering my question. I find it hard to believe that the 50 most difficult sites are in 3 districts out of 15. I find that impossible to believe. The math doesn't add up.
Councilman, if I may, I can't speak for Public Works because I don't know the exact numbers that they pulled together, but we identified 15 high priorities, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Howell, were the highest dumping locations that accounted for this volume in the grant, and I believe that those were identified. I can't speak to a 5-0 number, Councilman, but there were 15 sites that were identified as very high volume and high and chronic. Which I think
That's quite different than the impression
I
we've
agree.
been given here. And in fact, you stated that all 50 of these sites were in these 3 districts. So when we get this kind of hodgepodge of information, it makes it difficult for us to trust the next time that the information that comes around is going to be accurate. I don't believe those 50 high priority areas are in those 3 districts. I think they're dispersed throughout the city. The question is, it's great, just because CD5 has the smallest proportion doesn't mean they don't have the worst site. I don't know that. You guys aren't helping me with that. And I know that there are sites in my district that are extreme. Now, it may not be proportionate in terms of the volume as the worst, but nevertheless, the community is offended by it as much as anywhere else. So the next step would be, how do we address those 50 sites? But I'd like you to, we don't need to bother the committee with this, but I would personally like to know where those 50 sites are and if any of them are in my district, and then what's being done about those.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Alfano. Okay, so I think we voted,
the item with the resolution
amended
attached.
with the resolution here. So we'll move forward to council without objection.
Right.
Number 5.
Item number 5 relates to Power Engineers Agreement, report from DWP relative to this agreement and their work creating an EIR, EIS statement for the Barron Ridge Castaic transmission project. Thank you. Staff from DWP, CAO.
Maybe you could start off by just giving a very short, concise overview to the committee about the major elements of the Barron Ridge Castaic transmission project, and just tell them what it is, which area of the state it'll go through, and make it concise, because we've got to get the council on time.
My name is Mark Solacek from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The Barron Ridge Castaic proposed renewable transmission project will start from near the Tehachapi area, transverse through federal lands through the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, and end up in the north of Santa Clarita area. And the purpose of the project is to bring additional renewable energy from the area where there's wind resources and solar and geothermal to Los Angeles to help us meet our RPS goals and meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals.
Okay.
Okay, specifically for this item, this contract is for the preparation of a joint environmental impact statement, environmental impact report with the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, and it's for the construction of the Barron Ridge project. A joint environmental document is recommended because since the project will cross federal lands, if we do a joint document with the Forest Service and BLM, we'll maximize resources, eliminate duplication, and reduce costs. Under this agreement, Power Engineers will be acting as the third-party environmental consultant for DWP, for the Bureau of Land Management, and the Forest Service. And they, as a third-party environmental consultant, they'll conduct all the environmental analysis and all the public outreach required under the California Environmental Quality Act and National Environmental Policy
How long do you
Act.
think the outreach will be, and what's the plan to reach out to stakeholders?
There's a number of elements. We've already started the first outreach. There's been the scoping plans that are required under the federal act. There were 7 scoping meetings that just concluded on May 1st, where we went out to the different communities, Agua Dulce, Lake Hughes areas, California City, a number of areas. After that, we're doing the environmental analysis right now, and there'll be additional scoping meetings or public outreach meetings coming next year and then 2007. So that'll be occurring over the life of the environmental document preparation, and we'll be going to our board in early 2007 with the adoption of the environmental impact report.
Once this project's completed, what's the additional capacity it's going to provide for other renewable projects?
The total it will provide is 1,400 megawatts or 1,000 megawatts in addition to what there is right now.
Does the CAO want to comment?
Yes, I just wanted to add that, by the way, my name is Olivia Sevis-Val-Lunga, and just wanted to add that the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service chose to use an agency that was already contracted with DWP because it would save already the information that they have acquired during the preliminary process, and since the DWP would have to pay because we are the requesting agency, it does save us money.
Okay. Any questions or comments from colleagues on the committee? All right. We move that without objection.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 6, the DWP report relative to an agreement with OCSoft to provide software license purchases and maintenance services. Staff from CAO and DWP. Six.
Good morning. Bill Kreitz with the CAO's office. In addition to what the CLA had mentioned, I would like to bring up the fact that this amendment that you're looking, or this agreement, I should say, that's before you will help the DWP to avoid service interruptions, which I think is a key item, and it will reduce the time it takes for them to pinpoint problems with their power system, and it will help to consolidate information from disparate or various systems into one, which has a significant efficiency factor. This agreement also helps to apply and implement the lessons that have been learned through a one-year pilot project with OCSoft that concluded in 2006. that will be beneficial to the department.
Anybody else?
Basically, to kind of add to what Robert said, we have run a pilot program with this software that allows us to bring in power system information from the generating plants, substations, our energy control system, and then integrate them and then distribute the information between our engineers, our planners, our field crews, our computer-aided design programs, so the drawings are up to date in kind of a real-time mode, so for safety reasons and planning. So, but
Well, these systems are very important to the, well, the first one to our work management, and the second to our outage management, which is part of the control and assessing the status of the system and being able to restore service quickly.
I know that the department has a number of software agreements, and over the next 3 years, the department or the head of the department has stated that there's a desire to streamline and consolidate these software applications into one. Have you done any forecasting on that as to how much savings might result from that? Yeah.
Well, you had a meeting with ITA and...
internally, with the new CIO arriving at the department, Mr. Matt Lamp, and we've also, based on your recommendation from last meeting, we've met with ITA, and the plan is over the next 3 years, consolidate as many applications as we can internally in the department, and also look with ITA at the core level to see whether at the database, for example, Oracle, any financial systems, any systems like SAP, if we can actually make licenses that work out throughout the city. So in both fronts, from the DWP side and the ITA side, we are looking into that for the next 3 years.
And have you had any sense yet, or a range of how much, or percentage of how much you might be able to reduce costs overall by consolidating?
Mr. Lamp is still working on that. I believe he's going to do a presentation to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners real soon. He's presenting some of his...
Why don't we calendar that for us for 45 days, so he can come back and make a presentation to us too?
Oh.
Great. Any other questions, comments, colleagues?
Just a timeline as far as the contract and then the implementation.
Of this system here, within about 3 years, we should be completely implemented within the water and power with this system.
And I think good to hear. I know Mr. Cardenas is going to lead the efforts here in consolidation, and because we had a lot of departments, they were starting it as part of the budget, and I think we felt it was important to have an overall plan to have that implementation. So good to hear that. I think I missed last meeting where you were instructed to do that, but I think it's very important to see where we can have economies of scale and the ability necessarily to have some connection. Because we found the other day, I don't know, I think it's housing department does not have group-wise. They have a whole separate system, so you cannot get to them on group-wise, whatever decision was made. And so I think the connection between, even though it's a proprietary department of the city, is very important.
Yeah, they have set up weekly meetings with ITA, so we all attend exactly for that reason. Yes.
Because I think we also had departments that went off and bought their own systems and had no connection and really wasted some money and time. So, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. No further comments, questions? So let's move that without objection.
Okay.
I think the next item is 7.
Yes, item number 7. DWP report requesting approval of a 1-year lease and sale of surplus property located on Romaine Street to Hollywood Center Studios.
It's still me, Bill Kreitz in the CAO's office. This item with Hollywood Center Studios, I might add to what Mr. Prieto mentioned, that this proposed lease and property sale is in keeping with DWP's and the Council's policy and practices involving a declaration of surplus property, and its value has been determined by an appraisal that was approved by DWP's, or the evaluation, I should say, was approved by DWP.
No, I don't think we're going to answer any questions. I'm Craig Lynn with LA Department of Water and Power Real Estate.
And who's next to you?
Mary Dennett, City Attorney.
Did you want to comment?
The only comment I have to make about this particular sale is that this is a matter that has previously come before council in 1998 in the form of an ordinance to approve the lease and an option to sell the property. The tenant has exercised that option, the value has been approved, and the Board of Water and Power Commissioners have approved the sale and declared it surplus. What we're here asking the council to do today is to simply adopt the CEQA findings that were made in the prior city engineer's report to find that the public interest requires the sale of this property as a direct sale, and then to adopt the ordinance that's being proposed before council today. Happy to entertain any questions.
Great. Mr. Cardenas, I think you had a question?
Yes, the appraisal was done after HCS informed DWP that they wanted to exercise their purchase option.
Correct.
They exercised that, or they communicated that in April 2007. But the appraisal was done subsequent to that time. Was the appraisal done based on that moment, or did they dig up an old appraisal? Who did the appraisal? And
Did we wait for the market to just take a nosedive? And then
no, actually, the market was healthy on our end, on the seller's end, in April of 07 when it comes to commercial property.
Exactly.
But I just want to make sure,
When did we appraise this?
because I don't know what clauses were in the previous lease purchase option and what mechanism everybody agreed to use for the appraisal. So I just want to know what was the date of the actual information that went into the appraisal? Was it real time as in April of 07 or
Yes,
some other
real
mechanism?
time as of April of 07, in my recollection.
Correct.
And the appraisal was in response to the tenant having submitted an appraisal for the Department of Water and Power's review. The department rejected that appraisal, and the lease called for an alternative procedure whereby the tenant would then hire another appraiser that the department had agreed to. They chose an appraiser that the department had suggested, so everyone was in agreement, and that appraisal was the one that's before you today that valued it at $10,050,000.
So I would be correct in assuming that their appraisal was lower than ours?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
How old is it?
The appraisal, this one is April of 2007. However, I can assure you that the board had us look into those values recently.
Yeah, because I always thought from talking to brokers that appraisals were really not, their lifespan was about 90 to 120 days.
Like I said, before the Department of Water and Power Commissioners approved this item, they asked us to look into value. We broke and brought it back to them, and the value was confirmed
Consistent.
as in the same ballpark as it is here.
Yes.
Mr. Alacron?
What do you plan to do with the 10 million?
I'm sorry?
What do you plan to do? No, I'm asking DWP. What do you plan to do with the 10 million? You're going to stick it in the general fund?
The money would go back into the power revenue fund, is my understanding.
For what purpose?
I'm not sure that there's been I can't answer that. I'm not
Why don't
sure.
we stick it into the increased rate payer fund?
Okay.
So that we don't have to increase the rate so much.
I wouldn't be able
move
to answer
we
that for you
amend
today.
The money, since DWP has no specific purpose in mind,
okay.
I recommend that we agree to approve, but the money needs to go toward the increase. I'm not exactly sure what the language, but I think the chair understands what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
We just voted for a rate increase, and it's subject to certain expenditures.
Right.
So I believe there's a pot that is going to be set aside for those specific purposes, and this money, since there is no purpose deemed by the
Articulated.
department,
Yeah.
then we ought to put the money there so that we're not overcharging the ratepayers.
To subsidize the rate increase, or to reduce the rate increase. Why don't we get this in writing before it goes to council, but I think verbally it's fine to do it like this right now.
Okay,
Because
I
it captures
appreciate
the essence of what you're, and I'll second it for you.
Thank you.
We may have to have somebody who's a little bit more expert on the rates be able to address that question.
Hmm?
But in other words, I'm not.
More expert than us, that's for sure.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if.
Well, we just did the motion, so. you know.
Okay.
We incorporated certain procedures into the rate increase
Yeah.
that allowed us to reduce the amount of debt. And so somewhere in there, I think, is where the money should go. If we can't figure that out, I'm willing to consider it the way it is But I'd like to send it forward.
Nobody's
with-
telling us what the power revenue fund is, or what it does, or how it functions.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and there's nobody here?
Basically, it's an excuse also to find out more about how that fund works.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll be
At the
next
least.
one.
$10 million
I
less.
think the motion
Yeah,
was
exactly.
that, as part of the larger motion, was particularly on the, some of the lawsuits, any money that came up that would go towards reduction of the debt, instead of reducing it now, but looking at the debt.
Yeah.
Because that concept was when.
I think it's the
six-
infrastructure fund.
Right, when, well, yes, and when there was 60 million, and that'll be next year, 90 million sitting and waiting for a court decision, at whatever those funds, Wendy Yancey is jumping up over there. Did you want to come up, Wendy?
Wendy Yancey, Water and Power. We will report back in response to the motion. However, Councilmember Gruhl, when we talked about what we would do with the $60 million, that was specific to the water system and that issue, and recall that the budgets are separate and distinct. And in answer to Councilmember Alarcon's question, as it relates to what happens to the funds once it goes back to DWP after the sale, it is incorporated into the Power Revenue Fund and thereby used to for infrastructure programs, capital projects, et cetera. It's not actually, that $10 million won't be earmarked for anything specific. But we can report back on the motion as it's.
Was it included?
We're actually not asking for a report back, we're just asking to.
We're going to do the motion anyway,
Yeah.
but they can report back if they want.
Yeah.
Well, they can tell us how they think it affects their
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
If you were anticipating, if they'd already put it up for surplus property, had the money, was that already part of the budget that went forward, that incorporated why you wanted to go with the rate increase and so forth?
That I can't answer. But I,
It should have been.
Should have been, I guess that's the question, because then the others moot, if in fact that was included as part of the budget and in anticipation of that revenue, just like we have in our budget anticipated revenue of an animal shelter in my district. That's part of our budget for next year.
I will
You'll
confirm.
check on that?
If you will, Ms. Gruhl, what I might add is I don't know when their budget numbers were actually identified and calculated. However, this item did come to us, that is the mayor's office and the CAO's office, back in December. There was a subsequent letter of March 4th, which is the time we acted upon this. But this item very well may have been anticipated in the fall because this report and this proposed sale of surplus property was developed at least as far back as the fall sometime. So it may have been incorporated. I don't know.
It may have already been incorporated into the budget.
I'll confirm.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
They'll let us know.
Or into the surplus, at least.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
They scored it somewhere.
Great.
And if they didn't.
It's not found,
they're
new,
not doing it.
found
This must be
money that
new
we didn't
surplus.
anticipate, I think.
So why don't we just stick it in the general fund?
Yeah. Okay, so without objection.
That would require a
With
transfer.
Mr. and,
Just following the logic.
motion, which we will then have ready when we get to council. The next item is a closed session item, so before I go into closed session, I will take public comment very quickly so that people don't have to hang around. If there's anybody here who wants to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to come forward.
Or speak on item 8.
Or if you want to speak on item 8 before we close session.
That's the last item?
All right, no one's coming forward on public comment, so that'll close the public comment period. Now, item 8 is closed session. I am not sure who should be in here and who shouldn't be in here, but anybody who is not necessary or here on item 8 needs to leave at this time.
That's it.
Okay, we got somebody in the back there.
That's with Wendy's office.
Oh, he's with Wendy's office. He's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Shanice Black. I'm a Deputy City Attorney assigned to the Department of Water and Power, and present with me is Eric Tharp from the Power Systems. Before you today is a request for a settlement approval on litigation that is pending in Arizona court. I don't know if you had an opportunity to review the package, or if you want me to give a brief
Just
summary.
the basics.
Okay. The basics is that there is a dispute between the co-owners of the Navajo Generating Station and their co-supplier, Peabody Western Coal Company, concerning the interpretation of the amended coal supply agreement that was approved by council back in the 70s. And what has transpired is that there was a change in accounting laws. In particular, what came out was accounting standard statement number 106, which changed how employers were to fund their post-retirement employee benefits. And in addition to that change in law, there was also concern among the participants and their co-supplier. At this time, I'm requesting that we go into closed session. So we go out there. Sorry.
Let me know when we're on. We're on, back on? Okay, we're back in open session for the Energy and Environment Committee. I've already done public comment, so I don't see anybody waiting to come forward for public comment. If there are no further items, this meeting is adjourned.
Right, Jan.
So, get that